my character returns to Moscow at the end of the war and is unable to, and he's an engineer, he's a war hero who has lost an arm, and he's unable to find meaningful employment.
And Bill, that ties into our second question, because one of the things that you talk about in this book that I consider myself pretty well read and actually very familiar with World War II from a historical standpoint is that if you could share with our audience the secret of the underground millionaires of communist Russia and how that plays a key part in your book, because that's where your character becomes engaged in that, correct?
Definitely, definitely. Let me mention that I came across an old copy of Fortune magazine, which was actually published in 1981. And the headlines on the outside of the magazine was Russia's Underground Millionaires. And a book was about to be published in the United States by a gentleman by the name of Konstantin Simis. And Simis was very high up in the Soviet Justice Department. And I say that tongue in cheek because I don't think there was ever any justice in the Soviet Union, nor do I think
Very little
today. And he had published a book about the USSR, The Corrupt Society. It was about to be published in the United States. The KGB found out about Konstantin Simis's book. They gave him 3 days to get out of the country and to move to the United States. The article in Fortune magazine mentions a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, by the name of Greg Grossman. My daughter was a student at Cal Berkeley. I called Grossman and made an appointment, told him I was interested in perhaps writing a book on the subject. He was the world expert on the underground economy in the Soviet Union. And what
fantastic
happened was that after World War II, the Russians were virtually incapable of making quality Western goods. David, you're wearing a beautiful red tie. And that red tie, if it were manufactured in the Soviet Union in that era, somebody in the Kremlin would decide on what the color would be. Somebody would decide on what company would do the dye. Another company would decide on the material. And if it were in the United States, that could be manufactured in 60 days, maybe 30. In Russia, it was 2 or 3 years, and it was inferior quality. At that time, the Soviet Union was controlled by the Communist Party of about 2 million people. They controlled 200 million people. And the people who ran the country, the high officials of the Communist Party, desperately needed quality, Western quality goods. And they turned to some Jews, some Muslims, other people whom they thought were very qualified to start secret businesses. And these businesses would manufacture quality Western goods. They didn't have to worry about advertising costs or distribution costs because they were guaranteed to have rooms in the back of great department stores. There's a great department store on Red Square that I've been in called GUM, G-U-M. And if you were Mrs. Khrushchev or the wife of a high Soviet official, you'd be privately escorted into that room. So my key character goes back to Russia, cannot get a job. He's a highly qualified engineer. And by the way, this is based on historical fact. And the details are overwhelming. And the reader's going to feel like, my God, I'm walking the streets of Russia. I know these people. This is, and I've had many people tell me this. You're just absolutely absorbed into the reality. And the reality then is not much different to what it is now. It's gone full scale. It's a controlled world. You don't dare speak up against the war. If you do, even if you're a child, your parents are in danger. So my key character goes back, out of desperation, buys into a group that's manufacturing quality women's clothing at night within a Soviet factory. and he builds a nationwide successful enterprise. And this is based on something that really happened. And he becomes ultra wealthy. He decides that he wants to name the company and use what they do in the West. In the West, you have different brands, as we know, many brands today. And he decides, look, let's call it Paris Nights. So in the book, not only do the people want to escape from Moscow as they do today, and my leading character wants to escape with the love of his life to Paris, but they operate a company called Paris Nights.